Good evening. It's a joy to share the moment with you.
You have you were part of the election process. I believe you went out to vote today. How would you describe the process?
I actually didn't vote today. I chose not to vote for the simple reason that I sit on an electoral security roundtable and wanted to be non-biased as much as is possible, so that in the event that we are called upon to referee, that we can do so in a just and equitable sort of way. But I've monitored the process via your channel and other channels and via our own means. And so far, as large as the Nigerian democracy is, I believe so far has been quite successful in that it's been peaceful. The process has been a little slow, the introduction of the card reader system, but that I think was to be expected. And I must commend the patience of the Nigerian public across the country, with a few little exceptions here and there, for their staying power and their insistence on conducting their electoral duty. It's very commendable.
Okay, the process so far has had a few incidents here and there, but overall, besides the passion and the enthusiasm of the Nigerian voter to see this process through, what else would you say stood out in the course of the day?
Well, I think the peace has been really quite commendable. It really has been commendable. The anomalies, I think, will give way to a successful electoral process, ultimately. Which will take a little longer than we all anticipated. But nevertheless, I think for a young democracy, it should be counted as a great success. Even the larger democracies who've been around for hundreds of years have a lot of anomalies themselves. And for our youth and for our size, I think it's commendable. What I am more concerned about is the announcements. And as much as we've had peace up to this point, we are prayerful and trusting both in God and the Nigerian public that we will have a sustainable peace throughout the entire process, even post-election. The real winner of the electoral process will be the Nigerian people, as democracy has its say-so. And that is important to the country. And I would certainly commend the candidates for their calm, their peaceful disposition to the electoral process. And also I would beseech them by the mercies of God that whoever emerges as winner in the various contests must be conciliatory and recognize that even those who didn't vote for whoever emerges as winner are still part of the public that he or she serves. And we must encourage them to be conciliatory, and where there are electoral grievances, I think those must be rendered carefully to a justice system. And the justice system must do her very best to be just and upright.
Well, Pastor, before today, in the build-up to these elections, you were involved in signing peace accords. I mean, many saw you on that one in Lagos. Were you satisfied with the attendant effects or the impact that it had, or otherwise, after those accords were signed, including the most recent one before today?
Well, I think that the candidates most and generally are honorable men and women, and I think for the most part they have kept their word, and I think that is commendable. I think it's very commendable, especially for a democracy as young as this and as polarized as the two very candidates in the major parties, and with what has appeared to be, at least as far as the pollsters are concerned, a very tight contest. And I think that Nigeria's democracy deserves some sort of applause, and keep my fingers crossed till after the announcements are made and concession speeches and victory speeches are made, and that the candidates and the parties accept INEC's very hard work It's been a difficult challenge for them with a country that is young in many respects. But I do believe that the impact of the peace accord has had some useful impact. So far, so good. We continue to pray and trust in God and continue to trust in our noble candidates that they will ensure peace in their ranks regardless of the outcome, and trusting that this process has been credible.
Well, at the moment, many are just cautiously optimistic because they thought that comparing the last elections and the spate of violence and this one, that's during the elections, many have said that so far they're kind of impressed with what's going on today. But the elections will continue in some parts tomorrow. Did your committee also envisage this kind of response, and possibly how will it go down with those who will eventually come tomorrow and vote? I mean, I don't know if it may affect part of your congregation who, if they're affected, will have to go out and vote tomorrow.
Well, I think that we have 52 Sundays in which we worship the Lord in church. And if a few members are unable to be in service, for the good of our country and for hiring various public servants through the electoral process, I think it's a worthwhile sacrifice of their time. And I think that even though we would have hoped that Saturday would have concluded the voting process, for it to bleed into Sunday, I think where necessary, it's very acceptable. But I think we should learn our lessons from this election for the election in 2 weeks and for subsequent electoral processes that we will engage in subsequent years. We are a young democracy. It's our fourth attempt at a republic. It's a 16-year-old republic also. And I think we have done very, very well, relatively speaking. And I pray that the peace we enjoy today will continue through all the way on.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Pastor Paul, for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
So there you go, Pastor Paul Adefarasin, his thoughts on the elections. But let me ask Malaki, I mean, you were in the field before I come to Eddie. What was the feeling amongst the people? Because before today, after all INEC did and said about the preparations for the elections, here we are today, the election day. Many have successfully voted, others haven't. Some are still in the process of doing that. But there are those who also thought that on this day, you'll have maybe lots of tempers who may just be on the edge. Lots of people who may not understand what it is to expect when they get to the field. What did you see, especially when those officials didn't come early, INEC officials, and then when accreditation eventually started, and then when it was going to end, and how did it all go?
Undoubtedly, there were considerable dose of misgivings. You know, people were slightly disappointed, but I must continually juxtapose that with the resolve of the people to be part of that process. I think that balanced it off. However, you will recall that there was a shift in this election. And the purpose of that shift was also to take account, to deal with some of the challenges that, were obviously seen as hurdles. Now, INEC also did a kind of test run to ascertain the efficacy of the card readers and so on and so forth. So, a lot of Nigerians came to the polling votes in high hopes, believing that some of the challenges that were associated with this new experimentation were already taken care of. To begin to witness them in concrete forms, sort of dampen the spirits of the people. However, you were there because we were also here. And I could tell you that I could feel it myself. It was palpable. The Nigerian people, short of saying we won't leave, dramatized their determination to be part of whatever it is that will happen to make voting an effective eventuality. And that happened in most of the wards. The only areas where they could not help it were areas where INEC officers didn't show up at all. I got calls from all parts of Lagos, and I can specifically mention about polling unit 05.
Not showing up on time or at all?
Well, as at the time I left, which was 3:30 to 4 p.m., polling unit 055, 056, 7, 8, and, 055 to 056 in Oshodi. They call that place around the Afango, Charity Oshodi. These people did not show up. And there was this persistent call, text messages from those who knew that who were also interested and could have the opportunity of raising.
That means those areas may fall into the category of those who may have to continue voting tomorrow.
Luckily, that is what the Electoral Act also empowers INEC to do in the event of such challenges.
Eddie, you're going to be writing about these elections in your paper. What have you seen so far?
Well, I would say that we're a little taken aback by some of the failures and challenges we have seen, especially with the poor performance of smart card readers. The readers themselves have given us hope as a people that it will indeed check a lot of electoral malpractice. So for us to have recorded this amount of failure leading to a revert to manual accreditation, I think it's a setback. I am worried about the effect it will have on either the voting culture or the credibility of the election.